Hey everybody, this is Perch. How you doing? By the time this video comes out, I think the Captain America movie will be out. I hope. My suspicion is that for most of you, this whole Anthony Mackie says something and then people get angry thing will have largely faded. I mean, the outrage stuff doesn't last long, and I guess uh, I was thinking about this a lot because I posted a video saying hey, my big problem with this is always there's an art to jobs, right? If you hire a lawyer, you're hoping that lawyer is going to, give you legally sound advice. And if you hire somebody to do your taxes, you're going to hope they're going to do it competently. And if you're putting out a movie, I want to see like the PR agency and the marketing group do it competently. That's what I want to see. That's I think the contract that I want. I want more or less competence. And it bugs me when people do stupid things. And lately I really feel like from COVID, a lot of people started doing just stupid ass jobs. Just things that they would do better. And my kind of point in or one of the things I was trying to make is Disney as a film studio used to do a really good job of prepping their actors and their actresses to promote the film, not say anything bad about it. You hear these stories like behind the scenes, there was drunken nudity, chaos, and fighting, but they'd go out and everybody would put on a happy face because somewhere behind the curtain where the cameras can't see him, Mickey's like holding a gun to their head, like you better do a good job here, or we're gonna shoot you. And so that kind of was the contract, if you will, that would go on, and then really you saw it with Rachel Ziegler, and bear in mind, and this is what I said in the video because people can only really understand kind of one point at a time. I said, all these things are overblown. You've got Rachel Ziegler saying something about feminism, and people are like, holy shit, she just admitted to serial cannibalism and incest. It's the worst thing ever. And it was it was stupid what she said. It didn't help the movie, what she said, but it also is like, my takeaway is like, where's the handler? The person behind her with the cattle prod is going to be like, hey, shut the fuck up, lady. Don't say that. And so with the Captain America movie is kind of that way. But one of the funnier things, this video is about patriotism. If you look at the thumbnail title, so we're going to talk about patriotism in comics a little bit, and what does it mean, and where does it go? But what got me thinking about this topic was some of the responses. Somebody's like, I said, look, he talked about trustworthiness and integrity and try to do the right thing and being just good, being a good person. And I said, those aren't American ideals. They're worldwide ideals. And somebody's like, no, they're not, Perch. Those are American ideals. And I'm like, those ideals are talked about in the Bible, like long before America. It's not that hard. It's to try and go out and do good in all religions, whether it's Buddhism or or whether you're a Muslim or a lot of different things. Be like, oh, wait a minute, what about those bombers? No. I mean, a lot of the core teachings in any religion is to try to be a decent person. Other parts of the teaching are murder people who don't believe like you do. No, I'm kidding. Please, no, nothing in the comments. But they're generally speaking, these are global ideals. I posted that. Somebody's like, well, what about North Korea? And I'm like, okay, all right, fine. What Anthony Mackie said about people trying to be nice to each other are global ideals minus North Korea. Is that, well, what about China? No, actually, a lot of China is actually, almost every country has laws where you can't like just go out and randomly murder people for no reason. Now, lots of countries are hypocrites. Lots of countries have people, including America, who don't respect those ideals. But these are basic human ideals. But it got me thinking about patriotism in general, because one of the things, if you compare manga to US comics, manga does do a lot of what I would call nationalist patriotism for Japan in a lot of manga. There is there are a lot of core, what I'd say again, worldwide ideals. Try and be a good person, defeat villainy, don't rape and steal and do things like that. But there are also, things about, what I'd say more Japanese traditional ideals that come out in manga. And so when you're reading something like a My Hero Academia, or you're reading something like Ranma, there are aspects to kind of their religion, their culture, their nationalism, their patriotism, or their country, there are, I mean, in I'm gonna say Lum, but obviously not the original story, but a lot of people know it as Lum. When this alien comes down, there's stories there about teaching Japanese customs. Same thing with Korea. You see a lot of Korean. Uh, sorry, um, something very funny just happened outside. So I'm not going to tell you what it was. The guy had his pants off. That's what was going on. I just drove by and there's a guy with no pants. So I did tell you what it was. Anyway, my point is, in these different regions, you get a lot of patriotism, you get a lot of nationalism, and generally speaking, in the U.S., you don't in comics. And I understand that Captain America runs around with the American flag kind of on his chest, but still, that's his costume, and there's not comic. They don't do a lot with that. They don't do a lot with Captain America talking about American ideals. In fact, if anything, they spend a lot of time trying to run away from those or explain around them. Captain America is often in the comics just kind of portrayed as a superhero. They've gone to the disillusioned soldier thing, certainly 5 billion times too many. But overall, it's you do not see the kind of patriotism, kind of nationalism in U.S. comics in the mainstream that you do in manga in their mainstream, in what Shueisha does or what some of the other big companies who are putting out manga do. Why? Because, so I got to thinking, like, is it that, in Japanese culture, showing kind of respect for Japanese customs and heritage, actually people like that. A lot of manga readers really enjoy, things like we're going to go to the temple and we're going to do these customs. They like seeing that represented, particularly in sci-fi or things that are, Japan, but with superpowers or otherworldly things going on in Japan. They like that connection back to Japanese traditions and customs. In the U.S., you don't get much of that. I think the closest you would get, but it's not specifically American, is you get sometimes some reference to, Thanksgiving or Christmas, holidays like that. But you don't, when was the last time you had a mainstream comic where they went to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, or where they, went to Mount Rushmore and talked about American ideals or things like that. I mean, it's more rare. It's largely been baked out. And now the obvious answer, of course, is, a lot of the comic creators, a lot of them, but a decent amount of comic writers will kind of bend over backwards to talk about how ashamed they are of their country in a lot of cases. So not hugely surprising that, they're not putting those storylines in the comics. That more than anything, more than, quote unquote woke storylines, which what makes woke seems to change by the day. I'm seeing some people lose their mind over Rogue in the Savage Land outfit, and all I know is a couple of years ago, that was that was pinnacle of art to a lot of people, and you had people talking about how they wish we could go back to Rogue in her torn up Savage Land outfit, and now apparently that's gooner or groomer material, and it's somehow woke to have Rogue with her boobs hanging out. I don't get it. I literally, somebody's gonna have to explain that to me. I lost the plot. I don't understand that one at all. But even if, let's say for a moment, in the mainstream, so I'm not talking about, yes, there are certainly comics that are crowdfunded that have American ideals, appealing to a largely niche audience, but a smaller group. Those absolutely exist. I'm not denying they don't. But if you got writers who portrayed American culture and American ideals in comics in the same way that Japanese manga does, would the mainstream audience, forget about the creators, would the mainstream audience respond? Would they like that? And that's where I'm like, you know what? I'm not sure. And because I think it does, the comic buying, comic reading audience, the normies, the masses, basically, think of it this way: 80,000 people buying Batman. Of those 80,000 people that are buying Batman, would American culture and ideals in U.S. comics, like they sit in manga, would that appeal to that massive audience? Will it appeal to 500 people? Sure. I mean, there are crowdfunded books that are proving that today. Absolutely. But what about, what about beyond that? What about the 80,000? What about mainstream? Can US values and ideals work in comics for the fan base? I suppose the only answer I came to, but it felt like a cop out, was, well, if it's written well, sure. And I agree. If the comic is written well, if it's a good story and a good artist and everything, then yeah, it will sell. But and for those of you, and maybe that many of you listening to this don't understand the comparison I'm exactly making here, but Japanese fans, customers, will write in and request, stories of, they're like the superhero going to the temple, or seeing, the big Buddha. There's that's something that's requested. It's something that's desired. And, I have a hard time believing that, the mainstream of US comic fans would ask for that. I mean, I'd be interested to give it a try. For what it's worth, from a personal standpoint, my own personal standpoint, one of the things I love most about manga is when they dive into Japanese culture, and I personally would actually really enjoy it if US comics did that. I think that'd be pretty rad. I'd like to see some of that represented. Now, American culture doesn't have the same kind of norms that a lot of Asian cultures do, as traditions and other things. But anyway, what do you think? I leave the question to you. I've rambled enough. You've got the idea of what I'm asking. So do you think it would work or not? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course. And thanks for listening.